again, we're going to ignore this top area right here. In these, lines 2 and 3, this stuff is pretty common to what we had seen before in there, okay? Bold and italics, your abilities to align, text or even images to the left, center, to the right, and justify, and I'll show you how I use justify. But bulleted lists, numbered lists, again, your ability to indent pieces of content, these are all things that we saw from the old editor. Our ability to insert or edit a link. Now, the image obviously is quite a bit different, so we'll go through that. Our ability to insert or edit a video, we'll show you that. I don't even know why this is here, to be quite honest with you. I'm not sure why you would want to print something out from here, but apparently there's the option to do that. We've got our preview. The source code, and this little icon, it looks a little bit different because it used to say HTML. Source code is synonymous with HTML, and so if you click on that source code, it's basically going to show you all of the little pieces of code that go in to making your blog post look like what it looks like in the actual display screen. And then, of course, yay, spell check's back, right? So we can get in here and spell check, and I can see that egregious is spelled wrong and get it spelled correctly, and then turn that off. So let me just, for a second, kind of step back. When I'm writing something on ActiveRain, one of the things and one of the approaches that I take is I write everything that I want to get into that blog post. I get it on the page before I do any formatting. So you're going to see I'm starting with a blog post here, and this is a post I plan on publishing later today or maybe tomorrow. I haven't necessarily finished it, but it's long enough for us to get a pretty good look at the things that we want to look at as it relates to the blog editor, but I've just typed it all in there, right? There's no formatting. I don't try to add images and wrap text and change fonts and do all those things until I'm completely done. And one of the reasons for that is as you start to add and manipulate and do different things on this page, this source code can get a little bit messy. And so what I want is in the beginning, I want a fairly clean piece of source code, and that's why I just type my post out completely from start to finish before I go back and start manipulating anything. Okay, so now I've got it typed out here. Every once in a while, I will add my links in as I'm going, right? Because when I'm typing something out and I'm thinking, okay, I wanted to make that a link to something else, I may jump off and create a link in there, but that's pretty simple HTML. It's not affecting the overall layout of the page too much. Now, once I've got it all in there, generally the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to highlight certain portions of the post that I really want to draw people's eyes or attention toward. So for me, in this particular post, it would probably be, since I'm kind of doing a countdown here, I would probably come in here and bold, each of my different sections of the post that I want you to really pay attention to. And one of the things that I'm really keen to on my blog posts is the good use of white space. And white space can be a major determining factor between when somebody lands on your blog post, are they going to read it, or are they going to go cross-eyed and just be like, look, I can't, there's just too much here, I can't consume this. And so I really like to have good white space in mind, and I'll show you a little trick that I use to really get my white space to be how I want it. And so if I was to back this up here, let's say I wanted that to be, when I hit return, now watch what's going to happen. It gives me that full line of space in here. Now if I was to hit return here again, that might be a little bit too much white space. And so what I do is I will use the shift key, and you can really see it when I do it here. If I hit return, right, I get a full line. You can see this full line of space in between. But if I hold the shift key and hit return, it drops me down just kind of that half line, right? So what I'll do is from this, I might go like that to give it the full line, and then if I want a little bit more white space in there to really set that, that area that I want them to focus on off from the text above it, I'll hold the shift key and hit return. And so that's a little bit less space than had I just hit return, which would have given me that full page break, or that full break. Okay, so I might come down here and do this. All right, I'll put my cursor there. Shift, I'm holding shift right now. Return, just to kind of give this thing some good white space to break that page up so that if somebody's coming in here and reading this, right, especially when they first land on it, I want that thing to be chock full of good white space, because that's, people's eyes and just their brain are more in tune to be able to say, okay, I can consume this piece of content if there's good white space. Now I use the bolding because I want to draw your your eye to particular things on the page. And the title of this will be 7 mistakes you may be making in your blog, right? And so I want you to very easily be able to read down and see each of those different things I'm talking about. And so I'll bold them. I'll kind of use a little bit more white space to set them off from the rest of the content. Now, this is stuff we could have done previously, but I'm just kind of giving you my thoughts as I go through constructing my post. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and add an image. And when I used to do a class similar to what Carrie does every other Tuesday, which is how to write a blog post, and one of the things I would do in that class is I would show you 2 ways to insert an image into your blog post. And before our first class this morning, I went through and I looked at about 15 different like news organization websites, and almost to a site, there was really only 2 ways that professional news organizations online display images in their content. One way is like this, and I'll give you that way right now, which is essentially to place an image in between 2 paragraphs or blocks of text. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come here to the end of the paragraph I want to place the image after. Okay, so I want to place the image between this paragraph here and then this, number 6 right there. I'm going to hit return, and I'm going to give myself that piece of white space there where the image is going to reside. Now I'm going to come up here and hit insert or edit an image, and this is where things start to get a little bit different than you guys are used to, and that's probably why a bunch of you guys are here. So there's 2 ways to get an image onto the page. One is if we know the URL of where the image is hosted. So if you already have an image hosted somewhere online, whether that be like your website or maybe on Flickr or one of these image hosting sites, if you have the URL of the image, you can upload it right here. And so I'll give you an example. Here's a blog post, right? Just like any other page on the internet, when I see an image, if I come to that image and I hold Control and then if I right-click, essentially, it's going to allow me to save the image, right? I could copy the image URL, which is what I want. When you open the image in a new tab, this is where that image is hosted online, right? This image is from her website. So I could take this image, copy it, or the URL of this image, right? Copy it, so Command-C. Then I could jump back to my blog post. I could paste it in right there. Now, when I come to the next thing here to give it an image description, right? So beautiful beach photo or something, I don't know. Then I can come in here and change the dimensions, and we'll talk about the dimensions a little bit more when I show you the next way to add a photo in. Then I can come over here and I can use this advanced tab, and I can give it some white space, right? Vertical and horizontal space adds white space around the image. Right now, border is broke, okay? So they're working on fixing your ability to add a border around an image directly inside of ActiveRain. But right now, if I wanted to just place this image right here in this line, I'm just going to drop it in there and hit OK, right? And it's going to drop in there. Now, you'll notice once this image is in here and kind of the default, it's still highlighted, and it's the active portion of the editor that we're working with now, which means that I can come up here and use these things to manipulate the image. So if I wanted to center this image up, I could hit Align Center, and now that image is centered up. If I wanted to create a link out of this image, I could come up here and create a link and title this, and put a link in here and make this image something somebody could click on. You'll notice when I have this thing highlighted, see these little corner pieces right here? This is probably the way that you want to go about adjusting the size on your image. So once you drop it in here, you can grab the corners and you can manipulate it to look how you want it. And again, my major, for me anyways, as I'm writing a blog post, I'm really cognizant of white space. And for me, like, this is just too close up here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to come up here, maybe I'll hold Shift, and I'll just give myself another line. And now that white space is a little bit more obvious, and the image just sits in there a little bit cleaner than it did without that kind of extra half break or half line of space. So there's posting an image in between 2 paragraphs of text. And obviously, for like, if your image is taller rather than wider, this can look a little bit funny, right? Because you've got this image in the middle that's kind of tall, and there's a bunch of white space on the edges. You're probably better served using this format if you have like a square image like I have here, or especially if you have like an image where its width is greater than its height. Okay, so that's one way, and I promise you guys, go out and look at a bunch of sites, and you'll see that this is one way they do images, right, in between two paragraphs. A second way that they do images then, and the second way I'm going to show you, so I'm going to get rid of this one, and let's go back here and kind of bring us back to our original layout, is going to be taking an image and then wrapping text around that image. Okay, so let's say for each of these little sections I wanted to have an image in here. So for this section, I wanted to add an image in over here, either on the right or the left-hand side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my cursor at the place. I'm always going to have my cursor on the left-hand side here. Okay, so you can see my cursor is right here right now. And I am going to have my cursor be at the height I want the top of the image to lay. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. So my cursor is there. I'm going to come up here and add an image. Now this is the second way we can add an image, and this is quite a bit different, obviously, if you've been in here, than what the old one looked like. So you saw I clicked this little search button right here. Okay, and it brings up this responsive file manager, and what you're actually seeing here, these are past images that I've used in a couple of the blog posts that I've written since this new update. And this responsive file manager will actually save any images that you've previously used in a blog post. Now, if I wanted to get rid of these, maybe I've written my 50th blog post and there's just a lot of images in there, I can come down here and delete any images that are laying in there. If I want to add a brand new image, right, one from my computer that's not currently in my responsive file manager, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click this upload file button. And this may look slightly different for you guys. Like, I'm on a Mac right now, so this responsive file manager actually would allow me to drag and drop files in here, or I can click here. Your guys' might actually look like this. And so there's some slight variations depending on what browser you're using and what your operating system is. But in either instance, you would you'd click choose file. It's going to bring up your file manager on your computer, right? From this one, I just click here and it does the same thing. It brings up the file manager on my computer. So I'm going to go in and find a photo that I want to use. And I got a whole bunch of photos in here. Let's just find one that's. I'm big on using these images that already have white space on their background. Let me try to find one that's the full size of the screen. Okay, so let's say I'm using this image right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open that, and it's loading the image in there now. And now it's basically telling me, okay, this thing is uploaded. It used to be that from, I don't know, it's just there, and now you can work with it. From here, you actually have to come back to the file list. And this is an extra step, but now you'll see that image in there, and when I click this image, that's going to be the one that gets dropped in for me to work with. Okay, always want to give it an image description. This is going to tell the search engines what this is a photo of. Okay, now here's the deal. The image I just pulled in is massive, and if I was to just add it into the page right now, it's going to be so big, it's going to be even hard for me to find the corners of the image to make it smaller. And so what I always like to do is I know that the width of an ActiveRain blog post is about 700 pixels wide. I like to go in here and just make this thing about 300 pixels for the width, which is going to make my height about 208, and I'm fine. I can adjust this after I get the image actually in the page. Okay. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to advanced, and because that's a full image, right? There's no white space on that image already. If I was to just add it right now, watch what happens. Okay. I'm going to add it, and now it's not where I wanted it to be because I wanted to wrap text around this image, and you'll see it kind of placed it right here where my cursor used to be, right next to the L in the word look. There's two ways for me to now get the text to wrap around this image. The first way is to come up here to Formats and use either Image Left, which puts the image on the left and then wraps text around the right, or Image Right. Oops, I have to click the image in order to do Image Right. Okay, so that throws it off to the right. Now what I want to do is, it actually, when you do that, it will put some padding around the image. So you can tell there's already a little bit of white space here around the image. I like mine to have more. I want it to really be set off from the word so that when somebody's reading on this edge, their eyes aren't getting strained by the photo as well. So I'm going to come back here and edit this image. And on the advanced side, I'm going to give it a vertical and horizontal space of 20. Okay, and you'll see now that white space in there is quite a bit large. It's twice as wide as it was before, and that's 20 pixels of white space is what I wrapped around that image. Okay, one last thing I always like to do when I have an image like this and the words are running along the edge of it, I like to highlight the words on the left-hand side, and I like to use this justify, which will just make the sentences nice and clean and have a clean edge along that image. Okay, so there's me wrapping text around an image. Now, I generally do this for my blog posts at the very top, and if you guys have ever read my blog posts or a lot of the posts that we put out from ActiveRain, I've always got an image laying or living up here in the top right-hand corner of my post. So I'm going to do that. All right, let's take that image out of there, and let's actually take it up and put it at the top. So I'm going to start with my cursor at the very top left. I'm going to come in here and hit Insert or Edit an Image. I'm going to come over to my file manager, and since I want to use that same image, it's already in here, so I'm just going to click on it. But if I wanted to add it, I'd come over here, right? I'd click, I'd find the image on my computer, right? And then I might come in here and say, well, let's add that image in. Once it uploads here, and it's done, and get a little green check, I can return to the file list, and now that's a third image that I've got in here. Okay, but let's use this one. Now again, my dimensions, watch what happens. Like this picture's so big, it's totally just blowing out my entire blog post, right? It's this massive image. I can't work with that. So again, I will always come in here and make this thing, somewhere in the 300 to 350 range. And again, I can manipulate it afterwards. I come over here to advance. I know I want about 25. But then again, I've got to take this thing and I've got to now give it formatting for image right or image left. There's another way to do this actually, and so when this image is highlighted, you can actually use this align right, and it will throw that image over to the right-hand side for you. Right? Good white space around it. Remember, I said I always like to kind of do this little justify thing to give me a nice clean edge on my paragraph there. But that's how I wrap an image around, or I wrap text around an image. Okay, it's a little bit different, obviously, because before, when you came in here to do the image, on the Advanced tab, there was a little drop-down that said, I want to do certain things with the image. But remember, you can also always kind of manipulate your images using these things as well. Okay, but I've got it off there to the right. It's looking good. It's what I want. I'm coming down through here, and I'm going, well, you know what? Maybe these just don't pop enough. Maybe I want to give them a little bit more font size. Right, maybe I make them a 12 or something to really make them pop off the page a little bit. I'm always just thinking, what do I want people to pull out of my blog post, right? I use an image top right because when somebody lands on my post, I want it to just look professional and presentable, and I want that image to draw them down to the text and get them reading. So I wrap the text around an image like that. Okay. Again, the rest of these things are all right. If I wanted to change some text color or something, maybe I wanted to make these things, red. I could come in here and do that. I don't know. I'm kind of old school in the sense that I don't like to put a bunch of color in my stuff. I mean, when I go to the New York Times or the Washington Post or even ESPN.com, like places that I consider reputable news sources, I do not see a bunch of crazy colors. So, I want the presentation of my blogs to be professional and really to mirror what some of the foremost organizations in news and content delivery are doing. So I tend to keep my stuff pretty generic in that sense. I use images to kind of highlight and make the page and good clean white space to make things look professional and presentable. Okay, so that's this stuff here. There was a question in the earlier class, how come there's no longer an ability to add an H1 tag to blog posts? And the title of your blog post becomes the H1 tag. And kind of best practices from an SEO perspective is you want your page title which your title becomes, right? It becomes the page title of your blog post, and your H1 tag to mirror each other. So if we look over here at her particular post, which is pulling out the appliances for a thorough cleaning and inspection, right? That's the title of her post. When I come up to my tab here and I look at like what is the page title, you see in yellow it's showing me the page title. It's based on the title of this post. Her H1 tag is also the title of her post. So we're automatically making an H1 tag out of your title. That's why we don't allow you a chance to put another H1 tag in, because Google doesn't want more than one H1 tag on a piece of content. If you wanted to use an H2 tag, so let's say I wanted to come down here and make something an H2 tag, right? I would just highlight it and come down here and select H2. Your H2 tag should be a similar but different phrase to your title. So if I was doing homes for sale with a basement in Seattle, right, my H1 tag automatically becomes my title, homes for sale with a basement in Seattle. My H2 tag might be something like, you can also find homes with an unfinished basement in Seattle, right? It's a similar phrase, unfinished basements, homes, Seattle, but it's not exactly like my H1 tag or my title. All the rest of these are, again, we've used them, we've seen them. There is this emoticons, right? And so if we wanted to come in here, I don't know, if I wanted to throw in some smiley face, I guess I could do that. Probably more applicable is something up here in this insert column. And there's an ability up here in the insert column for you to be able to add special characters, and this is something we did not have before. You know, there's a bunch of special characters on here. I'm not sure, you can use whichever ones you want. The ones that would probably be the most obvious and common would be like the R, the registered trademark. You know, if you're ever using Realtor, right, you're going to do it something like, and then you're going to want to add that special character in there. I know the keystrokes for this, you know, it's like Option R or something makes the on a Mac, but you've got the ability to add in special characters. So copyright, you know, registered trademark, some of these different things that are you know, you come across every so often. But there's a whole bunch of other characters in here that you might consider using somewhere in your post. So you can print from here. Again, I'm not really sure why we gave this option. I don't necessarily know why you would print your draft blog post. You've got undo and redo. A bunch of the stuff, and why I kind of said earlier, let's skip this and come back to it. A bunch of this is stuff that's in here as well. So like the undo and the redo, right? Those are options right here. Select all would obviously select everything, right? Find and replace. So like if you had, you know, you were using, like just earlier today, I had a guy who was doing his blog post, and he was using his keyword phrase way too often, and I said, hey, you probably want to go back and change some of that to, you know, words like community or neighborhood or something, so he could come in here and do like a find and replace. Insert, so insert video and insert image are going to be duplicates of the things you see here. We'll do video here in a minute. Insert link, going to be a duplicate of what you see right here, right? These ones down below, anchor, page break, insert date and time, I'm not sure why you would use these necessarily. The horizontal line, though, that's one that I can totally see myself using in my blog post. So I'm going to come down here. Let's say I wanted to separate 6 and 7. I'm just going to give it a line of space there, and I'm going to do insert, horizontal line, and give me a nice clean line right there. Now, again, I like good white space, so I'm probably going to come up here, hold shift, and hit return and give myself that nice clean piece of white space. I might come down here and say, look, I'm going to make number 5 the same font size as the other ones, which was a 12, right? I'm going to come down here and I want to insert that horizontal line, but I want to give it that good white space, so I'm going to come back here, hold shift, and hit return. Now my post is starting to get formatted in a fashion that I like. Let's see what happens if I'm going to insert a horizontal line there. Notice it's noticing this image over here, so it only gives me the horizontal line to that point, and that's good. I like that. So I'm gonna break it up like that. You see my post kind of starting to take shape. View, right? We can show invisible characters in here. I don't know that you necessarily would ever use any of these things. The preview is going to be right here, where I can look at what this thing's kind of going to look like once it lands in my blog. I don't know that you'll ever use any of this stuff. Like why you would want to show invisible characters is beyond me. The formatting, there's a couple of things that got moved from these two lines 2 and 3 up here. Underline and strike through would be some of them, and then you can do like superscript and subscript. This stuff is all formatting, right? This is over here already. You could clear formatting off of some things if you wanted to do that. But again, bold and italics were the main ones that we saw people using, and so they're going to be here on the toolbar already. Okay, we're going to come back to tables in a minute. So then you've got your spell check and your source code. So again, a lot of this stuff up here is just duplicates of the things you already see on the page down here, tables. This is interesting, and we learned a bunch, myself and the audience, earlier as it relates to using tables. And so let's come in here, and I want to show you how the tables thing works. So I'm going to give myself some nice good white space in here, and I'm going to come down here and say I want to insert a table into ActiveRain. And probably the main reason I can see people using these tables is for getting text next to an image, but you want it broke. You don't want it wrapped around like a paragraph. You just want like an image, and then right next to it, or maybe even below it, you want to be able to give that image some context, right? So like here, right, he's got the picture, and then there's some context down below for what the picture is about. So I'm going to come in here. I've got where I want to place my table. I'm going to come up here to table, and again, this is completely new. We didn't have this functionality before. This will determine how big my table is going to be, how many rows and columns will be in my table, right? So this is going to be 2 wide by 2 deep. Let's say I wanted to make it something like that. Now, when it first drops in here, it looks useless. You're like, I'm thinking, what? Like what? So what I need to do is grab this, just stretch it out a little bit. Okay, and then if I wanted to make it a little bit wider, these columns a little bit wider, I can do that. Okay, now it's a little bit funky, but what we can do is we could come in here and like give it some table properties. Actually, that's not what I want to do just yet. When I start to type in here, so let's say I was going to do days on market, I was going to do average sale or average list price, and I was going to do average sale price or something. See how it's kind of moving things around? What it's doing is it's spacing them up based on how wide each of these header columns were. So now when I come down here and I say, well, 14, and I do 25, and and I start to fill these things out. What am I on here? 355. I don't know, something like that, right? I've got this table in here. When I publish this right now, it's not actually going to show the lines of the table. All it's going to do is drop the text in there. And so what I need to do is I need to come back here, and under table properties, I need to put some borders on this table. And so I would do something like a 4-pixel border for the table. Okay, I could even align the table and the content in the table to be centered. So now I do actually have, I believe, some borders around this table, and I've got everything centered up in there. And so now when I come down to publish this, and I need to give it a title before we do this, so I'm going to come down here and I'm going to post it as a draft. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that the borders on that table actually work. So there you go. So there's a table that I was able to add in. Now, here's where I think the table option gets pretty cool, is we can add images into these tables. So let's say I wanted to come in here, and right at the bottom of this section, I'm going to add a table in with an image, and then next to it, or maybe even below it, I can, depending on which way I wanted to go, I can add some content, some text content there. So let's say I'm going to come in here, I'm going to do a table, and I'm just going to do a table of that size, okay? So it's 2 columns, 2 columns, 1 row. And in this row right here, I'm going to put my cursor in there, and I'm going to bring an image in here. So I'm going to say insert or edit an image. I'm going to come over to my file manager. If I wanted to grab it from my desktop, I could do that. But let's say I'm going to add this image in there. Okay, and it's really, really big. So again, I've got to back off the size of that image so that it's something a little bit more manageable for that. I'm just going to come in here and hit OK, and notice that it gives me this image, and what it did is it made the other one really small. Okay, but as I see that? So that's how you can go about getting text next to an image and kind of having it float out there next to an image. I could also, let's see if I can get this to work here. I can also, ooh, I just messed that table up. This is where, like this, it's way easier or much easier. Let me just delete that table real quick. It's much easier now than it was ever before to add images side by side with each other. So let's say I wanted to take a couple of images and I wanted to add like 3 images wide, and I wanted them to place themselves across my blog post. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to come into this first one. I'm going to add the image in. All right, let's use this image. I'm going to give it a height. So this is the width, this is the height. I'm going to give it a height of 150. Okay, so there's my first image, and it'll take a second, but it's going to show up there. There it is. So in this second one, now I got to see how these are like real small. Those other 2 ones got so small. I'm going to come over here, put my cursor in number 2. I'm going to come in here and insert an image. Maybe I do this image this time. I'm going to make it the same height as the one that I did before. See that starting to come into play now here? Now I'm going to come into my third box. I'm going to insert and edit an image. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to grab my third image. I'm going to give it that same height because I want the heights to all match in those different boxes. Then I'm going to come over here and say, okay. And now it filled each of my images into those boxes. And this image was a little bit wider, you know, but you can see how I can lay images out side by side of one another. So this might be something you use, like if you had a listing or something, you want to place a couple of images in your blog post from a listing, you could do that using these tables. And then I can also come back, I mean, these things are pretty well centered up here, but I can, if I click on the table itself, remember I can come back here and manipulate the table properties, and so I might like go in and align all of these pictures and center them up. Not that it changed it a whole lot, right, because the table is kind of adjusting based on the width of my images already. If I wanted to come in here, again, highlight the table, and I wanted to put some properties in this table and say, hey, give me some border around the table, I could break those images up with a border, and now when I come down here and post my blog, I'm going to see my images. We're going to see them here in a second once my computer catches up with what I'm doing. There they are. So the table it's new stuff on ActiveRain. It gives you a little bit more kind of, you know, there's some additional stuff that you can do, but I could kind of give you a basic rundown of how those works. And you know, we saw from when we got in here, you can make these things as big as you want. In terms of adding a table in, right? It can be however many wide, and just whatever you select in here is going to be how big it drops that in, and then based on what kind of content you're placing in that will determine kind of how it lays out and what it looks like. All right, so let's go in now and let's take a couple of questions, or take as many questions as you guys have in here. Okay. Yeah, Debbie says, and this is a huge no-no. Like for me posting a blog, I never would have went to Helen's blog and just copied her image. I mean, it's a huge no-no, right? It's a copyright violation. Like if you were to copy an image from Getty Images, for instance, they will sue you. We've had ActiveRain members who have had a nice little certified letters show up at their door saying you owe Getty Images $800 for having used one of their images from just stealing it off of the internet. So yeah, absolutely do not use images that aren't yours. Okay, like I use a service called Fotolia that we buy the images and the ability to use those images commercially. But don't be using it. And the thing with doing it this way, like where you would come in here and place an image with a source, right, where I'm using her source. This is from her website. She could literally go to this and change the image on me. And there's been some kind of real popular instances of this happening over the years where all of a sudden on a real reputable site where they were jacking or pulling in an image from somewhere else, the person who was hosting the image changed it to be something like, this person steals images, they're a thief or something, So just be careful. Like, you should always be using your own images. That's a great comment there, Debbie. Okay. She says, didn't it used to be 600? Let's see. I'll tell you, no. And if it was, that may have just been something I was telling you. Like, don't get much wider than 600. But when you have when your blog is customized, the width of your blog becomes a set dimension, and that dimension, let's measure it here, is going to be 696. So you'd never want to get any wider than 696, or it will actually make your blog post have a scroll bar at the bottom. But just don't get your images much larger than that 696, basically. Helen says, what is the default font size? I believe the default font size is a 10. Let's just double check that. So we come in here and highlight this. It might even be an 8. Yeah, it's an 8. So, I mean, I could come in here if I wanted and make the entire page larger. One of the things that, that people, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, it's sometimes it's hard to read this stuff on ActiveRain, and I just come back and like they're using, again, the reputable news organization. Anywhere I go, the font size is pretty much the same, right? They're not doing, maybe they're using a 9 there or something, but you have the ability to manipulate it. Here, like, see how you can hit plus? Like, I can actually make these pages bigger and easier for myself to read on my own computer screen. And on a Mac, you do that by holding Command and hitting the plus key. I'm not 100% sure what that same functionality is on a PC. I could also make it smaller if I wanted. I don't know why I'd ever do that, but okay, let's see. Helen says, are the tables better SEO than JPEG of the same data? No. Like, I would never just place a table and then put a picture inside of it. In fact, it's probably, I mean, you just have a bunch of extra HTML around there. Like, if we look at the source code for this, this is the source code for this table. There's a bunch of extra kind of stuff in there, whereas if I just added an image, the search engine can see this stuff, right? They can still see it one way or the other, so there's not an advantage either way. It says, are you able to copy Excel tables into these tables if you have the same number of cells? I'm just not sure, Helen. I don't use Excel. There's some ways. If you wanted to just take I'm not 100% sure if you can even add an Excel table in like that. Maybe if they have some embed code or something you can use. There's some kind of third-party services that are out there. Here's one where Jeff talks about like adding some charts, and you can do these things and then bring them in. Um, I guess I don't necessarily have the answer for if you can copy an Excel right into there. I'm just not sure. um, so tables of data as opposed to a JPEG of the same data. Do they have the same SEO? You would want like a table with data in it. Excuse me. The search engine is going to be able to read the data. A JPEG, right? They're only going to be able to read your image description of the JPEG. So from an SEO perspective, it would be better to have the table in there with the data actually written into the table as opposed to just creating it in Excel, for instance, and taking a picture of it and then adding it in as a JPEG. Helen, I'm just, when you do if you do a table and you're bringing in MLS stats and that sort of thing, I mean, I would say I don't necessarily know how the numbers and the data in that table is going to enhance the SEO other than it's more content on the page. It's percentages and statistics and things that maybe a search engine would look at in terms of correlating it to the fact that your title was 95301 market report for homes for sale and Anacortes. I'm just I would say that probably the benefit of it is if you get in here and you find, man, every time I want to do one of these tables and use the ActiveRain table, it takes me 45 minutes longer. There's probably not enough SEO benefit to offset that time. Lori says, can you add a PDF to a blog post? No. You can turn the PDF into a JPEG and add it, but you can't add a PDF, unfortunately, at this point. Actually, you know what? Let's just, okay, so you guys now are going to lead me down to a different, right? Let's get in here and see, because my gut tells me no. That being said, let's just play around a little bit. You guys willing to let me play for a second with this? Because this actually has some other stuff in it, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm going to guess no here, but let's try it. I don't know. Let me find a PDF. My gut is telling me no, but I could be wrong. Just the way a PDF, like, yeah, I just don't think so, but let's just find out here. Yeah, it's not handling that PDF. It just doesn't know what to do with it. There are some. I think Brad Anderson has. Is this the one from Brad? Yeah. So there's a service called Scribed, and Scribed will allow you to upload. So you can see it right here, scribd.com. Scribed will allow you to upload your PDF onto Scribed, and then it gives you some embed code where you can place the PDF into the blog post itself. So in that case, let's say I want to do embed Brad's, so it gives me the embed code, right? Now this is code that Brad would have gotten on Scribe, right? But if I wanted to do that, let's get out of here. What I would need to do is I would need to add it into the source code. So I've got that embed code in there. I know that I want it right here at the bottom. So I'm going to do something like this, because sometimes when you get into that embed code, it's really messy. I'm going to do like, this is where I want my PDF to go. Okay, now I'm going to get into the source code. I'm going to find that little place where I wrote PDF, and I just always use command find, and I'd do something like this, PDF, and I'd search for it. Oops, it's not showing, I'm not seeing it on there. So I need to actually come in here and figure out where that's at, and it's down here, way down here somewhere. Right, I got to figure out where I wanted that PDF to go, and that's why I put these words in here so that I could find it in here. And obviously, it's not easy. Whereas I above or below the table? Let's see. So I was above the table. Let's make it more obvious, maybe. Source code. Let's see if I can spot that piece of source code. There it is. Okay, so right in here is where I would embed his scribe. And now I've got it in there. And when I actually post it, you're going to see my PDF in there. Yay, PDF. Right, and then Scribe gives you, like, there's options that you can allow somebody to download this. Like, he might not have been allowing somebody to download it, but there is the ability to allow someone to download stuff off of an embed code on Scribe. Fred says adding video like a Mac video. Fred, I still believe we're at the point where you can only add video if it's being hosted somewhere else, like ActiveRain, and I could be wrong here again, but I don't believe that we're allowing, let me just get rid of this thing here real quick. I don't believe that we're allowing video to be like hosted with us for display like directly from the site. So it would be something where, and I said we'd do video and we didn't. It's basically your ability to insert, edit video, right? I'm gonna have the cursor where I want the video to go. I'm gonna come in here and hit insert or edit video, and then I've got to grab source code off of a YouTube or a Vimeo or one of these other places where video is hosted. So no, you're not able to just straight up host video directly in your blog. It has to be through some kind of an embed from another service. Good afternoon, everybody. Oh my goodness, I don't know if you can hear that, but wow, that was loud. So I'd come to share, and I'm going to get down in here. You always want to make sure you get the size right here. If you start to try to play with the size on ActiveRain, it's going to be really challenging. So I can get in here and say, oh, okay, I want it to be 480 by 360. I'm going to highlight that embed code. I'm going to jump back to my blog post. I'm going to paste the source code in there, and I'm going to hit OK. And now, again, it's going to look like it's not working, but when I actually post the blog, that video will show up in the blog post. Yeah, Debbie and Helen, you guys were given some suggestions of ways, like take your PDF and convert it to a JPEG. And Helen says you can take a PDF and use a snipping tool to capture a photo file of it. That definitely works for like a one-page PDF. But if you think about, if you had you wanted to offer somebody the ability to download a 10-page PDF, you're not going to take a picture of it. It would be like, it would just be this massively long piece of content. But with the scribed option, like Brad has in here, you can embed, a 10-page. This is a 5-page PDF in here, and make it pretty easy for people to be able to consume and read without jacking up the whole rest of, the look and feel of your blog post. All right, do you guys have any? I think I got most of these questions as I saw them kind of coming in here. I could have missed one. Is there anything else in here that's really throwing you guys for a loop, or that you want help with? And I guess it could be related to the recent updates. Heck, it could be related to anything. I don't care. I got 8 minutes here with you guys still. If you want to ask me a question about just really anything ActiveRain related. Other than that, so I guess for me, for you guys walking out of here, like one thing I really want you to think about and focus on as you're writing your blog post is what does it look like when somebody first lands on it? That's one of the reasons why I use the text wrap around the image right here in the beginning, because this is what the blog post would look like. And think about the context of the whole page, right? They land on this, they're at the top. You know, is there good white space in here? Can they get the words run right into the image? Do I have good breaks, or am I drawing attention to things within the body of the post that I really want people to pay attention to? Just, you know, really, really look at your blog post from the perspective of what happens when somebody, oops, what happens when somebody lands on it, and then as they scroll down through it, is it broken up in a fashion that you know they're not going cross-eyed? I'm clearly drawing them attention to things that I want their attention to be focused on. Debbie says, what happened to all the other colors? Debbie, give me a little bit more. Do you mean like when you're doing text and you have the ability to color certain text? There used to be a lot more options. Again, I may have to plead some ignorance here because I'm just not, I never use colors. And the reason I never use colors is because, again, the reputable news organizations that I look at never use red headlines. Every once in a while, maybe, but so if there were more colors, I'm not sure what happened to them. They're gone. Is there an ability to bring them back? If that's what you're talking about, I could inquire about it. So there used to be more options in here. Looks like it's limited at this point. I will make an inquiry as to whether that's a function of the editor or a function of our putting limitations around the editor. Helen says, I see that at the top of your blog, you have a link allowing people to see deleted blog posts. That is a function of me being an administrator on the site. So Helen, if I was to go to yours, I can actually see your deleted blog post, but nobody else can. Um, uh, Helen, if you should be at least a little bit amazed that I know your username off the top of my head. But I can see your deleted blog posts. You guys can't. So if you ever like inadvertently deleted something and you didn't mean to, we can bring them back to life. But this is something that's kind of hidden behind the administrator firewall, as it were. Helen says, what happened to the font size 16? Let's see here. It's gone. I'll ask about this as well and see if there are this ability to, like if you really, really, really wanted font size 16, here's how you could do that, I think. Let's say I really wanted to make this size 16, and right now I've got it at what? I think I made it a 12. Oh, yeah, it's a 12. What I could do is I could come into my source code here. I could find number 6, maybe. Oh, here it is, 6. And it's got this right in here. I could make that a 16. So there's some ability to get around these things if you can find what you're looking for in that source code. I mean, the reality for me, you guys, is I would, like, if I had my way, I would never let you have much bigger than, like, these are, to me, are nuts. I don't know why we would ever allow somebody to have 38 font, like, where 36 font. Where in the rest of the world do you ever see that? It just doesn't, like, look at this. I, I don't know. I never see that anywhere else. I'm always thinking like, and I see a lot of agents. You like people they like to do the fun colors and all that stuff. And if I was a consumer out there landing on that content, I don't know. Maybe that's just my personality type though, and there's other personality types that relate better to that sort of thing. Um, ESPN doesn't seem to think so. Neither does, neither. I mean, I guess they do some. That's fairly large, but we've got that up here at the top of your blog post already. I look at CNN or any of Seattle Times or the Wall Street Journal or any of these places that I frequent. I don't see these crazy deviations from the standard. Okay. That's all I got for you guys right now, unless you guys have any trailing questions. I hope you picked up a few things there that you can utilize as you move forward with creating your blog posts and really just trying to make those things pop so that when somebody lands on them, they want to just dive in and consume the stuff that you're writing about. So you guys have an awesome second half of your week, a happy hump day. Hopefully that government shutdown doesn't have you in too big of a bind in any which direction from your house. My name is Bob Stewart on behalf of Carrie, who's always sitting behind the scenes here at ActiveRain University. Bye-bye, guys.